Hi guys, and welcome back to the next episode of Don't Fear the Weight with me, your TinyTitan host. Again, you see, I've got that right this time. For the last 4 or 5 episodes, I've just been keeping on calling myself Tiny. And it's like, do you know what? I've actually got a little bit bigger. So I'm not quite so tiny now, but yeah, it's the lockdown. It's made me kind of like, have brain farts every so often. So I'm even getting my name wrong. But I hope that, Brett, you have not got a brain fart today. So
always.
Always. Okay, well, that's cool. I'm quite happy that we can both have brain farts. So, it's all good. It's all good. Guys, I am joined by the one and only WNBF pro, Brett Freeman. People don't know who you are, realistically. And I'm just going to throw that out there. Most people don't know who I am. I don't think we even have anybody listening into this at this moment in time. So,
yeah, no, when I walk down the street, I mean, there's no red carpet.
No.
My name is Brett Freeman. I am known as BAFTUB on social media.
Right. First of all, before you go any further, why? Everyone's going to say, why?
Why BAFTUB?
Why BAFTUB?
I was actually just asked this on Instagram yesterday. Back in the day, I'm old, on the bodybuilding.com forums, my first progress pic was me next to a very ghetto looking BAFTUB.
Nice.
And so my initials, BAF, Brett Anthony Freeman, BAFTUB, boom.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And I'm a troll at heart, so I just ran with it.
Okay. Okay, so there you go, guys. You do not need to ask that question anymore. Everybody knows Brett because he was stood next to a bathtub. Brilliant. So carry on. Who are you then, apart from bathtub?
I'm a TinyTitan myself. I'm a Bantam weight. Well, I'm a professional bodybuilder, natural, in the WNBF. I've won 2 world titles, 1 in the lightweight division, and then 1 in the bantamweight, since they finally gave us a weight class.
Hey.
I am married to my beautiful wife, Brittany. I have a stepson, Tegan, who is an amazing kid. Cool. And I coach online with ATP Performance.
That's very cool.
Other than that, I'm pretty chill guy, honestly.
Just a chilled out Brett Freeman who has striated glutes all year round.
Yeah. Oh, yes, definitely.
We've had a lot of banter about your striated glutes because they are quite ridiculous. So we have to talk about those realistically before we get into anything else. In fact, before we talk about your ass, your stepson's name is Tegan.
Yes.
My daughter's name is Tegan.
Really? How do you spell it?
T-E-I-G-E-N.
Okay, so a little bit different.
Yeah.
It's T-E-A-G-A-N.
Yeah.
So.
It's not a very common name, and yet.
No, it's not. It's unique. I like it quite a bit.
So that's good. See, another thing that we have in common: striated glutes and kids named the same. Brilliant. And the fact that we're both old.
In fact. And
you don't need to agree with that.
I think your arms are bigger than mine, though, too.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
I'm not even. We got the hoodie on.
Just to embarrass you out. But yeah, okay, so let's talk about your striated glutes then. Guys, if you have not seen Brett's ass, he actually has it as his Instagram profile picture. So,
gotta sell the sexy.
Well, obviously, that's how you get more followers. It's the only way to get more followers.
Seriously, gotta thought it up.
This is it. So obviously with you being a lightweight and then a bantam weight, you need striated glutes in both of them. Let's just go through a little bit of your prep, just because it is something to talk about. By the way, guys, I got Brett on here because it was just the fact that it was like, do you know what? I think it'd be good to have a chat, considering that we've been talking about your glutes for a really long time and having that banter. But we have no idea what we're actually talking about. So this is just a really nice chilled out podcast. But he is a individual who can get extremely shredded inside and out. So I'd like to just kind of go through a little bit about your prep and what you think is the necessities of actually getting inside out shredded, especially as a light stroke bantamweight natural male.
Oh boy. I think how to answer this. I think a lot of it bottles down to just embracing the suck, to be honest. Everybody wants an easy prep. They want it to be all planned out, step by step, easy. But when it gets down to it and actually achieving that level of conditioning, there's no set of macros that are going to feel good. Satiety is never going to be there. Sleep is going to suck. I mean, you can try to mitigate that with supplements or a sleep schedule, but it's going to take a hit at the end of the day. And I think it's a lot. It's pain tolerance, willpower, and just, it sounds corny, but grinding day to day and just sucking up the fact that you are going to feel like shit the majority of the time. Even if you do implement refeeds or diet breaks, it doesn't take away that hunger. But it kind of just goes into the back of your head, in all honesty, throughout the course of dieting, because you adapt.
Yeah. So what happened with your prep? So let's go from like your off season, right the way from the top of your off season, and then coming down into your prep. So let's have a look at your particular calories. Obviously, I know that you're not a big guy. With you being a natural as well, you've got to obviously have some kind of, or some level of conditioning. It's not like you can get fat in the off season.
Well.
Maybe. But yeah, what was the heaviest weight that you went to in your off season, and then obviously your stage weight?
So before 2019, well, I've always gotten up to around 170, 180 pounds. And due to my in real life job, food and bev services, I'm always on my feet. So step count is always 15 to 25,000. So so cardio, formal cardio wasn't really ever done. The peak of my off-season calories, when I did track them at the beginning of 2019 prep, was around 4,000.
Okay.
So 500 to 700 grams of carbs, 250 protein, 100 fat. And that was slowly dropped over the course. It was a 10-month prep.
That is a
long ass time, which I went back, assessed what I did, and we're not doing that again.
Right.
But so I self-coached myself for about 8.5 months. And then I ended up hiring Cliff Wilson to kind of take the keys towards the end of the prep, because diet fatigue and everything.
Sure.
Handling clients, blah, 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 blah. But they slowly trickled down, and I made very, very small adjustments myself. The lowest they did get was, I want to say 3 weeks out, 2 weeks out. Carbs got down to around 110 to 130 grams.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is low.
Yeah, it was, I mean, because I was able to skate by due to my step and activity. I hung out around 2,000 to 2,500 calories. And it wasn't until I, hired Cliff, I had around 5 pounds left to lose for Worlds. And due to being smaller, needed to bring that conditioning. I mean, I was decently conditioned for the two warm-up WNBF shows that I did do. But I thought Worlds, kind of have to bring it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they slowly, they weren't, calories weren't slashed in half, every single week or every single month. They slowly dropped down. And then I would implement diet breaks. But it wasn't until, again, I started working with Cliff that he kind of dropped the hammer.
Yeah. And I know that he does go really quite harsh, doesn't he, in terms of his preps?
He did, yes. But the funny thing is I thought I would be hungry and worse off. Wasn't the case. He ended up bringing my fat intake up.
Yeah.
And then lowered the carbs. And I noticed satiety was actually better, as opposed to lower fat, higher carb. And then he ended up trying to reduce as much steps as possible that I could. So I kind of sandbagged things at work, not moving as much. So
yeah, for sure. It's interesting with you saying, like, your step count was between 15 and 25,000 every single day. So no formal cardio was actually ever done. Do you use step counts? It's quite a controversial subject, isn't it, really, in terms of like step count versus cardio?
It really is.
Would you prefer to use step count as opposed to cardio with some of your own clients? Obviously,
First, I have them track both, but the thing with, your Fitbits or whatever device that you do use, doing this, that's going to count in steps.
Sure.
as well. So I like to have those two variables tracked if I am prescribing formal cardio. I do think cardio is great for cardiovascular and health reasons. So in prep, I do like to have an idea of the amount of steps that they are taking, because I do notice that when it comes to the lower body, when step count gets excessive along with cardio, legs can flatten out, inflammation can occur, water retention.
Yeah.
And then I notice when I have them reduce steps or cardio, new lows start occurring and they just look sharper.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's another reason as to why you can have lower carbs and higher fats, because it stops the water retention from the carbohydrate at the same time.
Yes. Yep.
So, and in relation to that, this is again another kind of like a good debate. Not that we're going to debate because I find that boring, but a good kind of controversial subject is reducing or changing training all the way through your prep. So it's like off season, you do your powerlifting, because you do powerlifting as well, don't you?
Power building, yeah.
Power building.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, you don't compete in powerlifting, but you do like, or do
used
you?
Used to.
Right, that's where I'm getting a bit confused of. Yeah, come on, tell me about the whole powerlifting thing then. Let's get into that.
So it's really funny when so Alberto Nunez was my first coach.
Yeah.
And after my 2011 season, he wanted me to start focusing on something else. Since when I was younger, I always wanted to compete, which is every teenager's, dream to do when they get the itch. He's like, so why don't we start focusing on strength? See, since you've always been naturally strong, let's see if, how you fare to powerlifting. He ended up mentioning that I might have more potential on the platform as opposed to the stage. Maybe I should have stuck with what he said. But so him and Eric Helms helped me prep for a 2012 meet. I ended up winning best lifter weight class. I think I put up a 1250 total.
Nice.
Like a 475 squat and dead. Bench was trash. And then since then, I have always incorporated the big three and compounds. I'm kind of the old school idea that you master the basics. It's more nuanced than that, obviously, but
sure.
Yeah.
But you're going to get a bigger bang for your buck, say, doing a barbell curl or I don't even know how you can say it, an overhead press, for example, as opposed to, banded cuffed lateral raises.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
And that's not to like throw shade at, not accessories, but isolations. They do have their place. Yeah.
Well, I was just talking about this actually on another podcast with somebody, and we were talking about intrinsic and extrinsic tools in terms of mind-muscle connection, as opposed to strength versus hypertrophy, and they're both two completely different things. It's like somebody who is a bodybuilder isn't going to bench press like a power lifter for chest hypertrophy, right?
Yes, correct.
So, but then you also incorporate the bench press, but you don't bench press like a powerlifter.
It's not really, no. It's very hybrid. Same with my sumo deadlift.
Sure.
Since I've always, prior to maybe 5 years ago, I've always pulled conventional. But even when I do perform the power lifts, they're with a slight modification for my body. So sumo is not, super wide. It's more narrow stance. My arch is not as excessive as a powerlifter's would for the bench press. And then same thing for a squat. It's, not narrow stance for, the quads. It's more medium low bar-ish.
Yeah. So you basically do a wide stance conventional.
Yep.
A flat back kind of bench with a bit of a twist, and a squat because we like squats.
Love the squats.
Exactly. You've got to have a squat. Do you hip thrust though? That's the question.
Ah, man. Funny you mentioned that. Somebody ended up, I think they not criticized. They gave me like constructive criticism in 2019. They're like, "Oh, your glutes aren't in because you haven't ever hip thrusted." I'm like, no. My glutes are pretty developed. I think it's just a body fat issue at the moment. But thank you.
Yeah.
But I did incorporate them in 2019 a little bit. They were Smith machine hip thrusts.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think you get more out of a leg press or RDL. And I feel the glutes when I do pull sumo. I know some don't, but I think compounds are enough.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of like back and forth in terms of like getting this hip thrust right, yeah, and people incorporating it into either powerlifting or into bodybuilding. I mean, if you think about it, right, powerlifting and strongman, it has to be it's very, very specific, and
Yes, yeah.
the movements that you have to do are very specific to the sport, because it's not like they need isolations. Whereas when you come into bodybuilding, you want to actually isolate a certain muscle. But I mean, it was funny because we were just talking off air saying that we're not scientists, we're not going to get into all of this kind of data and that kind of shit. But it was literally just like one of the conversations that I had earlier on with somebody else who was Tony Montgomery Jr., which if you guys listen back to the past episodes, you can obviously listen into that. And the reason why bodybuilders incorporate it so much more so is because of the EMG data that came out. Now, the EMG data is all very favorable for muscles that are in the shortened position. And that's exactly what the hip thrust does. It contracts the glute into the shortest possible position, but not into the lengthened element, where actually, if you have a look at the other data, having slow eccentric movements are actually going to cause more muscle damage as opposed to getting it right into the shortened position. So realistically, is the hip thrust the king in order to build good glutes? Don't know.
They compare squats and hip thrusts, correct? I believe
they have done that in the past, yeah.
That's the last one that I do remember reading. I wasn't sure if it was Brad Schoenfield that, or maybe it was Chris Barakat that ended up debunking it.
Yeah.
In regards to the overall glute recruitment while performing either a deep squat as opposed to a hip thrust.
That's right.
I think when it comes to bodybuilding, a lot of people tend to run before they walk.
Sure.
And while I do think isolations are great, I think for beginners, intermediates, they should maybe focus more so on just getting stronger with the compounds.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they become advanced and there are body parts that might not be up to par, that is when they would specialize and start, catering specific exercises to those areas.
Yeah, for sure.
In hopes to bring up, say the glutes.
Yeah.
But I mean, if somebody's only squatting 315 pounds and leg pressing not that much, what are hip thrusts going to really do for them? I question, to be honest.
Definitely. And it's quite a big skill as well, don't you think? Doing a hip thrust properly.
Yes, definitely. I mean, a lot of people perform it incorrect.
Yeah, and then they moan that they've got like lower back pain, and that they feel their quads too much because of the friction that's obviously going forward from that side of things, so the leverage isn't correct, and they're not getting fully contracted and fully shortened. So yeah, I think it's one of those. Talking about these kind of like, yeah, maybe so. What's one of your biggest pet peeves that you see in the industry these days?
Oh boy. There's a list.
It's okay, we have time.
I think it's the constant fight between training the failure and not training the failure, to be honest. And like, I guess camps.
Yeah.
You either have to train to failure, or you're a pussy, or or you have to train with 5 RAR.
Yeah.
And range of motion too. That's another one.
Go on, what's your opinion on range of motion? We all know the whole kind of like training to failure type of thing, but range of motion, I don't think we've actually had a good gas about for a while.
I don't agree. I love all right, so with range of motion, I feel like it is very individual.
Yeah.
So lat pull downs, chest presses, even bicep curls, in all honesty.
Mm-hmm.
I think the number one thing when you are performing a movement is to feel tension in the targeted area that you are training.
Yeah.
I feel if you are to constantly use full ROM or an excessive range of motion, it's going to take tension off of that targeted muscle. And then I question, what was the purpose of that movement?
Yeah.
Same thing for squats. Some people lack flexibility and mobility, so they might not be able to squat ass to grass. And then when they do, maybe stretch reflex comes into play and it ends up taking tension off the quads if they are squatting for quad hypertrophy.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with lat pull downs, I feel. I have always pulled down to around chin level.
Yeah.
Anything more, I don't feel tension in the lats. Same thing with bicep curls. When you're curling, I don't turn it into a front raise.
Yeah.
But then again, I have terrible arms, so
I just don't train arms. So
I hate you. But yeah, I think with range of motion, it's individual and it should not always look the same person to person.
Yeah, for sure.
It's never going to.
No.
Somebody's textbook range of motion might look entirely different. Mine and yours, for instance, limb length, torso length, etc.
Yeah. I mean, we are both tiny.
Yeah.
So, and you know what? We're saying this, and I'm taking the piss out of your height. How actually tall are you?
I actually just remeasured because I'm like, I wonder how tall I really am. Because I'm the tallest on the Bantam stage, which is crazy.
Wow. Okay.
I'm 5'6.5", 5'7".
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you are a lot taller than me, like, because I'm like 1.
Yeah, I'm not even average though.
Do you know what? Fuck being average though.
Fact.
Exactly. You know, why should anybody be average? I don't think anybody should be average. I don't think anybody is average.
And you should strive to be weird. Yeah,
absolutely. Why should everybody be like fitting into a box? I'm so weird. But I pride myself on being weird.
Same.
Yeah.
We don't live in a utopia, so.
No, this is also very true. What is the weirdest thing that you have ever encountered about yourself? Like, has somebody ever said, do you know what, Brett? You're weird because...
Oh, man. Give me a moment.
Going to think about that for a second.
You're weird because... Oh. I have a pre-squat and pre-deadlift ritual.
Okay.
So I'll keep it, training. I mean, bodybuilding.
You don't have to. This is all for shits and giggles.
No, I know. I always tie and retie my shoes prior to squats and deadlifts. It's a habit of mine. A baseball player that I used to grow up watching, Nomar Garcia-Parra, used to always do his gloves prior to always, going at bat. And I'm like, I'm gonna start. It just, I think, stuck in the back of my head, and it's like a pre-ritual thing that constantly occurs.
That's funny. But you know what? I don't think that that's weird. I just think that it's almost like pre-game kind of routine.
Yes. Yeah, I can see it that way too.
So I don't see that weird. Like when I was going in for my bench presses, in terms of like the Englands or the British or the Commonwealth or what have you, every time I was just about to go onto the platform, regardless of whether it was going to be a weight that I'd lifted 17 times before or a PR, I just always used to adjust my wrist wraps. So everything, and it was really specific on how I did it. And then all of a sudden my the elasticity in my wrist wraps broke.
Really?
And I was like, what the hell? So I got given these other wrist wraps. So I just use these ones, and they were completely different. They were stiff and everything, and it would just like put me off my games to the point where I just basically did not have my wrist wraps on at all, and I just did it raw instead.
Jeez.
That was kind of mad, but I tell you what, the psychological element of it, because that's all it is. It's just psychology.
Oh yeah.
I have a client who is a strongman, and before every strongman competition, he has a hot chocolate, and it's a very distinct hot chocolate. He has to have it.
Really?
And it has to taste a specific way, and it doesn't matter. I mean, I do his nutrition, and I have to actually include that into his game day plan. It has no bearing on his performance at all. And I'm just like, you do realize that this actually isn't going to help you, but it's not going to hinder you. And if it's for psychological purposes, then fuck, have a hot chocolate. It's fine.
Agreed. That's funny as hell though.
I know, it is. But you see, people have these weird kind of things because it's just a little quirk that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And it is also
it's all in the head.
But the mind is so powerful. How many times have you gone up to a bar and you thought, shit, that's heavy? And then all of a sudden it wouldn't move off the floor.
9 times out of 10, even warm ups.
Yeah, because you've already talked yourself out of it. You've already
Yep.
said, shit, that's heavy. Your
Now,
brain is walking.
the mind is a powerful thing.
And this is exactly what we were talking about in terms of like your contest prep.
Yeah, no, definitely. You will yourself to carry out your actions.
Yeah.
I mean, if you approach the bar, for some, if you approach, you're gonna mind fuck yourself out of it.
Yeah.
So
definitely. So, okay, because we've kind of like gone off tangent quite a lot on that point, let's bring it back to bodybuilding prep. What was, in terms of your prep then, what was the worst thing that you can remember about it?
Oh, the one my wife and I had one little headbutt scenario. It's kind of funny actually. So when I was deep into prep, instincts started kicking in from like previous preps, which had never, trickled in before. 2017 was fine, but I think since I was kind of heading into unknown territory in terms of leanness,
Yeah.
a few bad habits started to kick back in, such as wanting to be alone for my last meal.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, and when I would eat my last, it was always after work or something. I would, come home from a long day, train, and I would just want to unwind. And for my last meal, it kind of was like a survival caveman instinct where I thought other people wanted my food.
Okay.
And I was self-aware of it because I knew it was going on, but I couldn't stop myself. I'd get paranoid and I would have to remove myself, and I would sit there, watch a podcast or something to try and wind down. And the wife and I kind of, bickered back and forth. And I ended up going to bed. And then I would constantly wake up because I couldn't sleep next to somebody due to,
Yeah.
prep being hungry
Yeah.
and sleep deprived. And I remember us arguing and me going into my stepson's room because he wasn't here for that weekend and sleeping on his bed.
Oh, no way.
And so the running joke in our house is that's my baby bed.
Right.
So when Brett's being bad, go get your goddamn baby bed.
That's so funny. I love it. I love it.
But yeah,
That is very cool. What was your last meal?
it was always the same thing. It
Yeah.
was frozen Greek yogurt with PB2 Fit, strawberries for volume,
Yeah.
and the remainder of my fat for that night, for that day.
For that day.
Yeah. So I would freeze it, slightly unthawed, and take forever to eat that thing.
Yeah, with a baby spoon.
Oh, always. We got a baby spoon, baby fork. Got to constantly reheat your meals if you're near a microwave. Yeah.
The
Struggle.
kind of funny shit that bodybuilders do in prep.
Oh, and it's so funny because they don't start becoming so apparent until like, I want to say 4 to 8 weeks out. I think it depends on leanness and just allowing those habits to come back, but they always trickle back in, I feel. Did
you like try to volumize your oats with loads of water or like riced cauliflower and stuff?
Xanthum. No. So in 2009, 2011, I tried to do everything possible to like try to feel full, satiated. 2017, yes and no. 2019, no, I did not.
Right.
I wanted to, take away what was it? I think it was the food reward hypothesis. Yeah. And it wasn't until I want to say 3 months from the end of my season that I started to actually start incorporating a meal plan, just to take away the thought of, eating and planning out meals, because I've always been very intuitive. If it fits your macros, flexible dieting. But no, I did not. I think I bought Xanthum gum in 2019 to give it a try, but I never opened it. I think it's still
okay.
I think it's still in my cupboard right now. But oats, before obviously I have tons of water in there, try to make it as voluminous as possible. Big salads, yada yada. But I just sucked it up in 2019. The less I could think about food, the less hungry I felt.
Yeah. Sometimes, do you know what? Sometimes I actually find that meal plans work better off season as well.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there, honestly.
Yeah.
I think in terms of adherence and just being able to judge, I mean, assess if they are improving or not.
Hmm. And
But I mean,
just things like gut health. Like if somebody comes to me
yes,
and they have like a
yes.
lot of bloating issues and stuff like that, I'll put them on a specific meal plan, and then we'll have a bloat diary, and it will be like, right, okay, so when did you experience this bloating? And I normally take the foods that they have already allocated, because I get people to track their food for me for like 4 days.
Hmm.
Put them into a meal plan, and I'll say, have a look at some of like the red flag markers that jump out to me, and I'll be
Yes.
like, right, okay, so when did you experience this bloating after meal 1, 2, 3? How long did it last? Blah blah blah. And then we actually just remove that element from their meal plan, replace it with something else, and then if the bloating goes away, it's like, great, okay, do you know what? When we go over to a macro approach, and you just want to have some more flexibility in it, you just stay away from those goddamn chicken sausages, because they have leek in them, so you just can't have them.
Yeah.
you know so, but yeah, I agree with that. So in an off season plan, especially if they have some kind of gut issue, or something relating to that, I think a meal plan can be very beneficial. But then, like you said, to take the thought away from planning your meals, especially like 4 weeks out, because the last thing that you want to do is just be like, oh, now I've got to think of something else to fit these fucking macros. And you can, let's face it, you can turn into an arsehole, and you can move the so many amounts of macros around just to try and get a chicken burger and a donut in there.
It's funny you mentioned moving food. My wife actually, my wife cooked my 96 beef 1 week out from Worlds.
Right?
Didn't flip out though. But she's like, "Oh my god, I'm sorry." It's fine. But no, I do think I kind of like the way that you do set up people's your clients off-season meal plans. That, I mean, it makes a ton of sense. Because some individuals can't adult during the off season, and you give them too much freedom and flexibility, they just start going off, and micros, fiber, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, aren't hit.
Correct.
And then you do start running into digestive issues. Same thing for prep too. Maybe the scale is stalled because, food timing is inconsistent, day to day. Sodium is fluctuating, water is fluctuating.
That's it. And like when you were saying you were trying to get all the or like you thought about things and then just embraced the suck, so you didn't have other fibrous stuff and that kind of stuff. Have you ever seen these bare naked noodles, or like 0-calorie noodles and stuff?
Yes, I think I had them like 2 weeks out from Worlds. Terrible.
Right. If you had them 2 weeks out from World, what was your digestion and gut like? And do you remember whether you weighed in the next day?
I weighed in the next day a little bit heavier.
Yeah, it's mad, right?
A little bit heavier, and they were disgusting.
Yeah.
I think before they used to be called shirataki noodles.
That's it. That's exactly it.
Yeah. It had been like 7 years since I tried them, and they were just as bad. They smelled just as bad as I remember them to be.
Yeah. They smell like rotten fish.
Yeah.
Rotten fish oils. I mean, if anybody's taking like a normal fish oil tablet for your EPA, DHA and stuff like that, like when you swallow it and then all of a sudden you have like a burp, and then it's like a fish burp. That is basically what these shirataki noodles smell, and well, they don't taste like it, but it tastes like kind of like slippery balls.
They're like, they taste like worms would taste like. If that's, I'd never had worms, but
are you sure?
Good protein.
But yeah, I mean that is like literally a fiber. And I had a girl who was making weight once for a powerlifting meet, and she was like, oh, I had this and then I had that, but then my weight just like spiraled up. I'm like, what the hell did you eat? Because we're trying to make you make weight here, you must have had something different than what's normal. Well, I was this and I was that, and I was right, okay, so what did you have? I had these noodles. Banging. That's exactly what it is. That and calorie-free jelly, like sugar-free Jello. So that I found, it just retains so much water. It's weird because it's like there's nothing in it. There is nothing in it apart from basic chemical shitstorm. And it's that chemical shitstorm that makes people just like blow up like a huge balloon. So yeah, top pro tip coming from a WNBF pro: don't have like fish smelling noodles.
No, or I mean, same thing for like sugar-free pudding, sugar-free chocolate syrup. I found can kind
Like
of
the
cause.
Walden Farms stuff.
Oh God, yeah, like Walden Farms or fat-free peanut butter.
But then you had the PB2 Fit.
That surprisingly, that digested really well. I used that for my back load.
Oh, okay.
And no digestive issues, no water retention, no nothing. Honestly, I surprisingly digest it really well.
That's interesting. You say that you did that on a backload. So you backloaded with obviously very low fats, obviously, and just like piled a crap load of carbohydrate, right?
Yes.
So how heavy was your backload?
When I self-coached myself, it was very conservative. So I would deplete for the week and then backload around I would backload Thursday and Friday.
Okay.
When I did it myself, and it would be around 400 carbs each day, fat 30 to 40, but I was always flat. I didn't want to get too aggressive and spill, which in hindsight, I can be a lot more aggressive. With Cliff, we ended up running a mock peak 2 weeks out, depleted around on 100 carbs. We backloaded 600 carbs, didn't spill. I woke up very full, sharp still. So Friday before Worlds, we ended up backloading around 700 grams of carbs. But yet again, woke up pretty flat. So we ended up feeding up yet again to the stage. Not spilled, but not 100% full. I ended up looking better at the night show.
Yeah.
That's what the head judge ended up telling me. Bob Bell.
Did you find one of the things that I've had from an anecdotal experience was that when I carb people up, I don't use a backload approach. I mean, the thing is that I don't have a set approach of what I like to use in terms of backloading. It's person specific, you know. Some people look really good on the higher fats, lower carbs. Some people, even like massive guys, they look absolutely massive on like 120 grams of carbs, and it's like, what the hell? I mean, I need a lot of carbs in order to fill up, but that's me, and I get completely shredded. I don't realistically need to deplete. When I competed in 2017, in hindsight, I depleted too long. So I depleted for 4 days, and then trying to actually fill up for the 3 days prior to the show, I just couldn't do it. I had like 1,800 grams of carbs over.
It probably wasn't enough time for them to assimilate.
Exactly. I had nothing. But then doing it as kind of like a not mock, but like if I've done a quote unquote mini cut and then wanted to have like a big refeed and something like that, and I had like 1,000 grams of carbs or something along those lines, they didn't touch the sides. But what I did do was, if I reduced my carbohydrate just a little bit and actually increased my fats, I found that my intramuscular triglycerides actually filled out more so. So it held on to the carbs and actually slowly drip fed it all in, rather than just piling nothing but glucose in or nothing but dextrose and starch in, and then you can't uptake it because of a lot of science and geek shit that's going on with transporters and stuff like that. But I did find that if you included and started to drip feed in fats at the same time, especially for females, the intramuscular triglycerides don't get so depleted, which was really interesting. So did you start to use any kind of fats in the lead up to the show?
It's funny you mentioned that, because that's what Cliff does on the day of the show. Well, for me, he ended up increasing. We mainly were using fat, moderate amount of carbs, and a little bit of sodium to hold that look.
Of course.
And the same goes for other clients. I mean, like yours as well. Every single peak is different. For some, even if we load them on carbs, it might not show up for 3 days.
Yeah.
And then something that I have learned from Cliff as well is everybody, I mean, sex and race play a pretty important role. So he has mentioned, and I have also noticed, African-American clients don't tend to handle carbs that well. And
so I really don't.
Yes, and I didn't know what he was talking about until I, have peaked a handful of them. And one in particular in 2019, I wanted to backload.
Yeah.
So we depleted. He was looking very, very, very sharp. I backloaded Thursday, not too aggressive, spilled over.
Really?
I think I backloaded him on 300 grams of carbs, so conservative, but he spilled the hell over. We ended up cleaning it up. I brought fats up, cleaned the spill, ended up looking 100 times better. Same thing for females. I've noticed if you do the met rate and tons of other things, high carbs sometimes spill them, whereas fats might bring about a better look.
Definitely. I've got a client at the moment, powerlifter, which surprisingly, it is very surprising realistically, but she's Hispanic.
Okay.
And she literally cannot handle carbs. 100 grams of carbs is about as much as she can handle on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, and that is it. You know, where realistically on a high fat, lower carb, and you know, only about 50 grams of those carbs are starches. The remainder of it are just incidental fibers and fruits and stuff. Yeah, because she just can't do it.
And I bet they feel good too. That's something that's
amazingly good. Good.
That's the crazy thing too. Like that client that was on, 100 grams of carbs, for most they would think, oh, he's starving, he feels great.
Yep.
Whereas you put him on, 250 to 300 grams of carbs, lethargic, dragging ass.
That's it. I mean, she can't even, if she had over and above like 120 grams of carbs, I think that the highest that we ever got her on was about 150 grams of carbs. And she's an under 52 powerlifter, but even 52 kilos, 150 grams of carb for somebody who's training 5 days a week with high intensity.
Not a lot.
It's not a lot. Yeah. But we got her up to like 140, 150. Do you know she couldn't even string a sentence together? She had that much brain fog because of it. And it was like, do you know what? We're going to have to seriously manipulate all of this so much. We used some natural GDAs. It was not working. We tried to bring everything down just so she literally had that energy in her or energy availability in order to use. And yet still she was like, I just can't do it. I'm waking up foggy and I can't. She was so uncoordinated in the bar. And you marry that with her menstrual cycle. And she was like, he was just all over. I was like, okay.
Oh boy.
Yeah, this just isn't working. We're just going to move everything around. So we did. So we just basically used a high fat, moderate protein. She's only on about 120, 125 grams of protein. And then, like I said, just under 100 grams of carbs every day. And she's absolutely bang on, functioning stronger than she ever has been, sleeping the best that she ever has been.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, it goes to prove that you just can't write a book. Everybody's different.
No. And there's no specific algorithm or formula for, setting up macros for somebody or, caloric intake. Everybody responds differently.
Totally.
It's cliche, but true.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I don't know. We can waffle, can't we? So we've been on this for about an hour now, so I think we're coming up on time. But have you got any kind of like pearls of wisdom for anybody that is listening to this podcast that you want to leave on?
Embrace the journey when you do start training. And if you do end up competing, embrace it every single day. And don't overcomplicate it.
Oh, that's a good one. Don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah. It's cliche yet again, but don't overcomplicate it.
It's a good one. So on that final note, then, I shall leave you to it. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Don't Fear the Weight. Again, give us a thumbs up, give us a like, give us a share. Go and follow BAFTUB on Instagram. I will put all of his links underneath. If you want to ask us any questions or have any other suggestions for any other podcast subjects, then obviously please send me a DM. Just slide into my DM.
Slide.
And I might ignore them or I might get back to you. We never know. But until next time, thank you once again, Brett, for your time today.
Thank you for having me on.
Catch up with you very, very soon.
Thank you.
Bye.